We've got a topic planned today. We think it's topical. Chetan and I have been building it up in our in our 20-day live chats just to warm ourselves up. But as luck would have it, we both have had a intellectual and energetic crash, and we're all fuzzy and disorganized and all over the place. But you know, the other theme that's underneath all of this is just showing up as you are, real and unrehearsed. And we want, if anyone joins us, we want this to be normalized as well. So, Chetan,
Rocco. And hello, good people of the internet. Hello, fellow doom scrollers also. Honestly, Rocco, I'm a bit of a mess today. I don't know if you can tell from my hair or the sweat on my brow, but man, it's been a crazy morning already and it's just a couple of hours into it. But I'm glad we are here. I'm glad we were able to start this on time, dude. I love it when these things happen. And I feel that the mess is out of the way now. We'll just take a few more minutes to be slightly more messier and then we'll be calming our way
well,
into the Kali Yuga.
you know what I recommend when we open something like this is
Hmm.
people arrive this way. We arrive
Yeah.
this way into ceremony, we arrive this way into important conversations. In some sense, we're all arriving this way into this moment, unrehearsed, unprepared,
Hmm.
unregulated, and there's just a simple solution for that. It's to remind ourselves what the simple heart of a Better Way project is. It's presence, presence,
Hmm.
discernment, and intentionality. So we can start with any one of those three. If we start with intentionality, why did we come here today? We came here today to keep the ball rolling, to connect with the growing audience, the growing community, who also wouldn't be sure because they've seen a million tacky things on the internet. What's this now? What is this? And the only way we can't tell them anymore, we now need to start showing them. So
Yeah.
that's our intentionality. And that is a precursor to our greater intentionality, the great so that, this kind of broad project that
Hmm.
we're all trying to care about. So just in like what do you think about that, and how can you frame just the intentionality piece, and we'll talk about the presence and the discernment in a minute.
I think you've mentioned it perfectly, Rocco. The intentionality really is um, we're trying to show how it's not just about um, it's not just about how we feel sometimes that things have to be perfect before we even begin, and that ends up slowing down. Even we don't even get to start in that sense. So perfect is the enemy of the good, and therefore what we're trying to achieve is just to start wherever we are, however we are, show up, have that intentionality right from our heart, and keep looking for a better way. And
That's
that's
it.
it.
And
that
and that's
that's
the
the
same
intentionality.
truth in a relationship, in a
Mm,
conversation, a project, your
mm,
project of spiritual development or personal
mm,
development,
mm,
um,
mm,
our
mm.
project of trying to steer. Everybody wants a better outcome for humanity. Now, I don't think anybody sits there and goes, "I wish it was worse." You know, there are some really
Yeah,
bad actors at the moment who are benefiting from the chaos and the pain, but
yeah.
the majority of people, one has to assume, want something
Mm,
better. And it seems like
yeah.
such an impossible project because there's so much wrong with it. But you just start from where you are with what you have. So, and
Yeah.
that's this recursive, wonderfully enfolding intentionality that we're sitting with. You know, everything is a
Mm,
cycle. Everything can be broken up into cycles, and if you do that, you don't have to try and solve the whole thing from here. You just choose the stance for that moment,
mm,
and then try and regulate to that, and then try bring your intentionality to bear just in this blind curve of this whole arc of life that you're sitting on. And that kind of is about what we're talking about today as well. Now, the other two parts of that would have come from the book that I sent you when you were visiting your sister in Sydney, The Hearth and the Well. The main message of
yes.
that also was presence, discernment, and intentionality. So we've covered
Mm,
intentionality. Presence is the invitation there is presence is what deepens connection, and
mm,
connection is
mm.
what deepens meaning. So if anyone's going to invest any time scrolling or doom scrolling on the internet today, might as well be something like this. And
I
then
think so too. Yeah. Yeah.
And then if you're here at all, you might as well try and connect really with the sentiment of what's being said and the depth of what's being said. Otherwise, what's the return on that investment that you can get? So it actually behooves all of us to become really, really present in this moment. Just connect with the seat under your bum. Connect with your breath. Just drop down back into your body. Realize that effervescent, crackling anxiety or stress or tension that you're sitting with. Maybe it was a coffee, maybe it was a backlog of anxious thoughts, maybe it's just the doom and gloom and negative energy that exists everywhere around you on the internet. Can we just for this hour together now, can we just create like a kind of insular boundary, a bubble, a ring fence, a sacred space where inside the space we're just putting all of that drama outside for a moment, and we're being as still and present and imperfect as we possibly can. Can we maximize this time?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And for what it's worth, Rocco, I would also like to add that all the tensions, all the doubts, all the anxieties will be waiting for us outside of the bubble. So just for this 1 hour,
Yeah.
can we just let go of them? Because we're not
Yeah.
going to do anything in this 1 hour other than just let go of these bubbles and let go
Yeah.
of these doubts and just be here. Just be here.
Right. And that comes into this discernment part. We have to discern what belongs inside and outside that boundary. We have to discern whether we are aligning with our own best intentionality or not. We have to discern whether our intentionality is actually going to lead us towards this kind of outcome. Every step is a threshold to the next step. So how you face and process this moment very much determines the version of you that's going to emerge in the next moment. So that discernment becomes literally here in the middle. Imagine you wake up into a chess game that looks like you're busy losing, right? It doesn't mean you've lost. And if there's still a chance, it's the best investment you can make is to act as if there's something winnable from here, and to be very meticulous and careful about every single step and every single move that you make. That's what discernment is. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's not just
Yeah.
fake optimism, Rocco, because the shadow side of that is sort of a fake optimism, but this is realistic. It's your life we're talking about. And if you have any chance of actually bettering it, why wouldn't you want to do that?
Oh,
Right?
my live just shut itself.
Ah, really?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a bit of a shame. On
I
YouTube, you
think
mean?
I don't know what's happening on Riverside, but it looks like the YouTube recovered, so it's okay. It's okay.
Okay. I
What
think
you
we'll
were
be good.
saying was it's not as if this is ridiculous optimism either. It's actually a
Hmm.
pragmatism in a kind of way. There's something else that
Hmm.
I wrote in that book, The Hearth and the Well, right? I don't know if you
Hmm.
remember. It was about these two stances we can occupy. The one stance
Hmm.
was equanimity, and the other stance was pronoia.
Hmm. Hmm.
And
Hmm. Yeah.
equanimity basically
Principle.
just says, there's things that you can and cannot change. And if you are equanimous, if you have this intelligent sense of peace about the fact that some things cannot be changed and that stressing about them is not going to make them any better. In fact, it robs you of the effort and energy that you might invest in looking for solutions. You're
Hmm.
actually better off trying to practice equanimity, not as a stoic virtue,
Hmm.
but just as a sensible stance, so that you can discern more carefully between what actually can be changed and what can't be changed, and where do I want to invest my energy and attention. And the second one was pronoia. It was to say pronoia is this opposite of paranoia. Paranoia says everything in the universe is out to get me.
Hmm.
Pronoia says everything in the universe ultimately seeks to do me great service. Now, you don't have to be an idealist or silly to believe in that. You just have to think about this possibility. In the face of all things that are possible, right? Either everything is predetermined, which I don't think it is, but what we do know is that if somebody is blind to opportunities and potential, they won't pursue them. But every single thing that happens or has happened to you especially if it's uncomfortable, difficult, unpleasant, becomes an invitation actually to say, well, if I had my time again, or if I could choose differently, what would I choose to keep, stop, start? What would I do differently? What lesson can I learn? How can I improve this moment? Because if there's any improvement or any direction or any gain to be made from here, it's definitely going to be made with that kind of openness to possibility and that kind of ready attitude and preparedness to see what's available. And if you can't do that, you're just robbing yourself of that opportunity. So now it turns out that pronoia isn't really just a silly idea or an optimistic idea. It's a pragmatic way to try and get the most out of even negative opportunities. Even the worst things that are happening in the world become invitations for us to say, Jesus, how can I help? What can I do? How can I not be part of the problem? How can I help? And is my help helping? And then the final thing about pronoia is we like to think, there's this wonderful thing, I think Albert Camus said it, and he said, I would rather act, I would rather act as if God is real, even if I get to the end of my life and find out that he isn't, because then I still at least am happy with the way I lived my life. Then get to the end of it having acted as if he wasn't and find out that he was. And so pronoia is the same. I don't know if you have to call it God, but you just have to say, imagine that the universe actually can benefit you. Even your hard moments can actually do you some sort of great service. What would happen if you had that attitude all along, and you taught your kids and your friends to hold this kind of attitude? Surely, or a project team at work, or a relationship. If leadership sounded like that, surely the outcome that you can achieve and the meaning that you can make has to be superior to if you act cynically or pessimistic or helpless, the whole way.
Your life is happening for you, not to you.
Well, certainly that way it is,
Yeah.
So that's the heart of presence, discernment, and intentionality. And I suppose that's how to separate that tension, make room for the imperfection that's here, and just make the most of the time.
Talking about imperfections, Rocco, I just saw looking sharp, bro.
Yes, it's a little bit colder here, and
Yeah.
this is some of the
This
like
is
when I'm working as a bard or
yeah.
as a speaker or as a
Yeah.
poet. I mean, if I go up in front of people, this is the kind of outfit I would wear.
This is actually the perfect outfit, I just realized that. I just saw it. And it's also Easter, right?
Yeah.
Do I wish you a happy Easter? How does that work? Happy Easter, right?
I don't know what. In fact, that didn't make sense to me because you're celebrating the death of the hero. So I don't know how.
That's why I wanted to ask you really. I mean, I went to a Christian school as a kid, and all of my formative years were in a Christian school, but I still don't remember
That's
how
what
do we
went
really
wrong for you,
celebrate.
Chetan. We've now figured it out. That's where it all went wrong, mate. There you go, folks. Case closed. We've solved it.
That's why I've been talking about unlearning all this while, bro. Right? It was all against the Christian school.
That's it. Yep.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah. So it's Easter there, and what do we wish each other a happy Easter? How does it work?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the tradition is, but I'm not buying any of that. But let's talk about why we're talking about Kali Yuga, Easter, and the resurrection and the soul. And this is going to be an exciting exploration of symbolism, symbols, allegory. And just remember to prime anybody listening for this. All right. So much of my work comes from the foundations of Hermetics. Hermetics is what's called the perennial philosophy. It's the kind of mysticism and universal understanding that exists underneath stories, behind all claims about religious truth, spiritual truth, wisdom truth. It's principles. It's based on principles. And one of the foundational principles is really just a map. It's a map of human consciousness and a map of our experience in the world. And it says that our experience has got two snakes, like almost two snakes of a kundalini that are rising up and meeting each other. as they coil their way upwards. And one of those is called logos, which is our sense of reason, our sense of logic, our sense of sense making. Yeah? And the other one is mythos. That's our imagination. And the other form of sense making we have called meaning. Yeah. So you can think of the one as your reasoning mind, and you can think of the other one as your experiencing mind, your sense of self. Yeah. And the logos mind is all about the sacred geometry of the world, the laws, the cause and effect, that kind of geometry, that kind of
Fix
symmetry,
things.
that kind of precision. Yeah.
Mm, mm,
And the mythos is more how you orient this experience of being a self, both in relation to everything else in the world, to other people, and to the cosmos, and to moments in time. So it's the story, it's the narrative, it's the tropes, the archetypes. Yeah.
Can you give us an
And
example of both, Roku? Will that?
yeah,
Mm,
so if I think of something like a paradigm of like a model of how to see things, I can
mm, mm,
explain the chakras. And so that's a model of logos. Yeah. Here I've
mm,
got a representation of the different aspects of a person. But when you actually start relating those points of the chakras, the root, the sacral, the gut, the heart, the
mm,
voice,
mm,
to a personal, subjective, what does this mean about me? What does this say about me? How do I relate to this? And how do I
mm,
relate to other people?
mm,
Then it becomes personal. So for Easter, for example, we look
mm,
at the symbol of the cross.
mm,
Um, and it's really a map of something, like the 4 points of Dharma that we're going to talk about. But
mm,
as soon as
mm,
you put somebody on that cross, now the story that belongs to that lets me connect to that very simple symbolic idea in a much deeper way. So there's a bit of logos
mm,
there. In other words, this is how the world works. There's
mm,
four
mm, mm.
elements. There's four corners of the compass.
Cross. Mm, mm,
There's two sets of dualities with a north and a south pole, and then I turn one
mm,
like this. Now there's two of them, and they cross at an intersectional point. There's a whole
mm,
picture of logos, of sacred geometry, of
mm,
precision of meaning symbolized in that symbol.
mm,
But
mm,
it does,
mm,
we don't orient to that. There's something interesting happening when we look at a symbol like that, is like a swastika. There's something
mm,
interesting happening in that Hindu symbol, and it draws us in, and we can kind of see some principle of the universe being depicted. Yeah.
mm,
But
mm,
there's no
mm,
human orientation to that. But as soon
mm,
as you took a cross and you put Jesus on there and you told me the story of why he did what he did, now suddenly I've got archetypes, I've got a different human relationship to that symbol. And his
mm,
story
mm, mm,
means something to me based on my relationship with what his project was, based on what
mm,
that archetypal meaning has resonance to me in my life.
mm, 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 mm.
So
Yeah.
if you think of Shiva, Shiva's got the trident, that's a symbol.
Mm,
But when I
mm,
see Shiva, actually the trident now reminds me of Shiva. And then Shiva,
mm,
he's got stories attached to him. And it's all those stories get invoked just by
mm.
mentioning the name Shiva or just by looking at that symbol. And that's how those two ideas come together. Yeah.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're
Makes
all
sense.
having this experience, this dual experience.
Mm,
And even when we do meditation, they say you must try and quieten the mind. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to drop out of this logical left brain, but you're also trying to not be drawn by the story of the right brain. And you're trying to drop into this heart space, which is kind of neutral.
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's from that slightly removed perspective that you can see both of these two experiences form how we make sense of the world. If you look
Mm,
at Ian McGilchrist's work, he will talk about the left brain and the right brain, which is simply our rational problem solving self, which
mm,
has a very egotistic sense of self.
mm,
It,
mm,
it, it,
mm,
it,
mm,
it
mm,
literally is designed to see everything in the world as an object, and it's the only subject.
mm, mm, mm,
And then the right brain is designed to appreciate the wholeness, the
mm.
interconnectedness of things. And yet, it's not that we can live with one or the other.
Either. Yeah.
We have to live with both, but one of them has to be the master,
Master.
and one of them has to be the servant. One of them has to be
Yeah.
the doer of tasks, and one of them has to be the decider of what tasks are done.
Yeah.
Now, what we have in the modern world is all of our systems, all of our traditions, even our language, the way that we exchange ideas, the way that we transact, and everything is transactional. All of our interfaces are cold. They're all gaming our psychology. All of that promotes and engages with and amplifies the left brain experience, so that side of our persona, and atrophies the right brain. We poke fun at symbolism. We poke fun at ideas of mysticism and making totems and symbols and archetypes and icons of gods even have meaning. We ridicule that, yeah, because the only thing that makes sense is science and atheism and reductionism and logic.
Yeah. Yeah.
And of
And whatever
course,
can drive the stock market up.
that's it. And of course, we can't get by without that, man. Like, try
Yeah.
cook a meal without reason and logic, right? Try run a
Mm.
relationship or a household without reason, or try raise a child without reason and logic. You can't do it.
Mm. Mm.
But that doesn't mean we're doing very well without the other part, right? That this
Mm.
symbolic essence of language. And the language of that side of us is archetypes, is symbols, is metaphors and myths. Yeah. So we're exploring that today. And we're exploring that in the moment. Now, I'm just going to say a bunch of things. Should we go? Should we just get into
Yeah.
it? Yeah.
Yeah. So now you've primed people about why symbolism matters. Why,
Yeah.
if there's a dearth of symbolism in our lives, what loses out is the human soul, is the human heart, is the
Yeah.
human interconnectedness, and everything else that matters other than the stock market prices,
Yeah, because
So,
the experience that we're having at the moment is of terrible disconnection, terrible isolation, terrible meaninglessness.
yeah.
And so it's that illness that made me come up with the following statement that said, soul is what is missing. Soul is what is missing when life feels wrong.
Feels wrong.
Because I can reason it to be sound and logical and sensible, and people have been arguing to death for years, but it still feels wrong. And what is this instrument? Who is the voice? Who is that subjective decider that is qualifying this as wrong, right? And so I thought, well, what are the things that are harming us? We're feeling burnout, depletion, yeah. So the
Yeah.
opposite of vitality. We're feeling disconnected, isolated. Right? That's the opposite of connection. We're feeling a malaise of meaninglessness or purposelessness. You just kind of, and that opposite is meaning and purpose. So I looked at all the things that are wrong with the world and what people are generally complaining about, and I go, what's the exact opposite? And those exact opposites are connection, belonging, yeah, imagination, creativity, vitality, yeah, and purpose, a sense of purpose in our life. And those things are how we derive meaning. So therefore I knew that the answer is soul is what is missing when life feels wrong. And therefore, what is soul? Well, how can we understand it in a sensible way? It's just our thirst and our capacity for connection, for belonging, for imagination, for creativity, for purpose, and how we derive meaning in our lives. Yeah. And everything that builds that and restores that and replenishes that has to be part of the solution, because it's so obviously the absence of that is what the sickness is. Yeah.
Agreed. Agreed.
Yeah.
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 And so the symbolism that we want to explore today is one of the Kali Yuga and one of the Easter, and how we can marry those two to make sense of a moment in time, to
Yeah.
also have probably a map of action going forward.
Maybe we
Maybe.
can get that far today. I don't know.
Yeah. But at
But
least let's start to make sense of it.
the
Yeah.
simplest part to start is this universal symbol of the egg as the cosmic soul and as the human soul.
Okay. Okay.
So there's this interpretation of the letter zero. Oh, it looks like an egg, yeah. And that's the symbol of emergence of life. That's where the chicken comes out of the egg. Where the phoenix rises out of that egg. That's in the tarot cards, there's a symbol of the world. It's also in an egg shape, a zero, right? And that zero means infinite possibility. In mathematics, zero is, you don't know what it's going to be. It's the beginning point for everything. Yeah. And the Egyptians used the egg as the symbol of the soul. The Babylonians used the egg as the symbol of the soul. People who studied Hermetics, esotericism, different forms of mystical inquiry echoed this understanding. The egg was the symbol of the soul. And that is why in pagan celebrations and festivals, both in Western Europe, in Eastern and Central Europe, but also in the Middle East, this period of spring in the Northern Hemisphere, of renewal, of rebirth, was symbolized by bunnies, because bunnies and rabbits produce very prolifically, and the symbol of the egg. And that's where we literally get the Easter bunny and the Easter egg. Yeah.
Oh,
That's
okay.
it. Yeah. I mean, even in the Greek Orthodox tradition, they still give each other red dyed eggs. And this is an ancient Egyptian symbol of the soul, is the egg.
I see. Okay.
Now, if you think of this other Eastern symbolism, the Yugas, I want everyone to realize that, first of all, the Yugas is like a count of years, of cycles, cosmic cycles, right? And it says that 75% is the golden age, 50%, I forget the numbers. Let me look it up quickly.
You mean the 4 yugas and how
The
much
4 Yugas. So
time?
the 4 Yugas are,
Sat- Should we say the names? Or are you
yeah,
looking for them?
please.
Yeah.
So Satya
Satyug,
Yuga,
Dwapar Yug, Treta Yug, and Kali Yug.
right. So Satya is where, that's like the golden arc of this egg. Yeah. And it takes up the majority of the arc. Yeah. And then in the smaller section, like a proportionately smaller section, is Treta Yuga, which is where Dharma is diminished by 25%.
Yeah.
And then Dvapara is the condition where Dharma is diminished by 50%. And then in the darkest arc, that's Kali Yuga, which in Kali means is the feminine form of Kala, which is both time and black.
Yeah.
So it's the hardening of time, that period that is furthest away from the symbol of the sun. Now, if you remember, the Earth is actually in an elliptical orbit around the sun. So that actually is a model of our immediate cosmos. And there's this word called aphelion or aphelion, APH, yes, which means at the opposite end of helion, which is the Greek word for the sun, right? And so the aphelion or aphelion is this moment on the arc, this orbital arc of the Earth, where the Earth is actually the furthest away from the light of the sun. So the light of the sun, in a symbolic context, is the light of truth, the light of Dharma, the ordering principle, where we get our gravity, our light, our warmth, our heat, it's our physical example, our local example of our connection to divine ordering. Yeah? That's all it really is.
So that cycle is a year long. The cycle of
In
the
some
Earth's
senses,
revolution.
in our seasonal sense, it's a year long. In our lives, it can be in different cadences. And in the Kali Yuga, it can be a society can have a golden age, that can have an autumn, they can have autumn going into winter, and then they can have the death of winter just before the renewal of spring. This happens in a marriage.
Yeah.
This happens if you're going for a 10-kilometer run. There's a period where, there's everything has these sine curves, peaks and troughs. It's just a universal signature.
Yeah.
And it signifies two things: that at that period of winter moving into spring, whether it's a relationship or a project or a society or an era of humankind, every single renewal is only possible when you allow for the circumstances and conditions of renewal. Abundance is only possible if you observe renewal, and renewal is only possible if you observe surrender into that cycle of death and rebirth. That is how nature renews itself. Nothing that has a body lives forever. That's a Hermetic principle. Everything that has a body, physically, metaphorically, conceptually, like a corporation, right? That's what Latin, it means in Latin, is embodying, corporation, incorporated, right? Everything that has a body decays. Yeah. That's astrophysics, that's quantum physics, that's everything that has a physical manifestation is subject to decay, disappearance, so that it can come back into renewal. And that's really all the symbol of the soul is. And our soul, this capacity for creativity, vitality, imagination, meaning, belonging,
And
it's not
purpose.
something that's just forever. It actually has to observe its own forms of transition and transcendence and renewal. And anyone, a person or a society or a project that doesn't ritualize these transitions, these death and rebirth cycles, whether they're anyway, any,
It's a,
did you get me back?
yeah.
Yeah. Anything that doesn't honor these cycles can't belong to life. It's the only way to keep that alchemy of life and the alchemy of the soul progressing is by, if you want to come through life, life is organic, life is got a lineage, life is the roots that are connected to the earth connected to the ecosystem that's connected to the cosmos. You can't act separately from that. And part of that is the cycles of time. Part of that is orbits, its seasons, its tides, its cadences, its rhythms. This is one of the foundations of Hermetics, of a universal theory of everything. It says that everything that exists in cycles, in cadences, in rhythms of ebb and flow, of death and rebirth, of flow and return. Yeah? And so the only way to keep progressing on the pilgrimage of life and allowing the soul to appreciate through that is by having the courage and the wherewithal to honor these cycles of death and rebirth. That means we need, like I was saying in my live video today, by definition, all growth, by definition, all growth requires an outgrowing of who you were before. So how do you do that? How does, and there's different modes of doing that. There's different ways archetypally of thinking about that. If you think about the caterpillar and the butterfly, that's one way. The other way is the phoenix. It throws itself into the flame and it sacrifices itself to itself, and then it bursts forth in a new egg, and that egg hatches and it becomes the new phoenix. We get the snake eating its own tail, the Ouroboros. We get the seasons of the year. We get the acorn becoming the tree, then making a new acorn, becoming a new tree, and then eventually becoming a forest. We got the cycle of water falling as rain, as snow melt, trickling down, becoming this long river of actualization, and eventually surrendering itself ultimately into the ocean, to then disappear into the ocean and then evaporate eventually again and start the cycle somehow miraculously later. These are our symbols of karma, of reincarnation, of dharma, so we actually understand them, but we didn't understand that they were all so simply related. Yeah. And it's not hard to tell that we are in what feels much more like, if you think of those 4 stages of those cycles, the Satya, the Treta, the Dvapara, and the Kali, it definitely doesn't feel like a golden age. It definitely doesn't feel like an age of purity or compassion, right? it feels like a dark age where things are dying and ending and turmoil is happening and things are being turned upside down, and that's the Kali Yuga.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Now, the idea that I love the most is that in each of the yugas, now remember one of the interpretations of yugas is these long million-year plus cycles.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But Hermetics tells us, as above, so below. Everything that exists on a grand scale exists also on a small scale. Everything that's, and so on and so on and so on. The universe is fractal and recursive.
Yeah.
You can see nothing but evidence of this, right?
Yeah, that's where you
Yeah.
mentioned there are bigger cycles and there are smaller cycles to every single thing that you can see.
Yeah.
Your own life, your marriages, your
Even
relationships,
in a
etc.
day, in a
Even
single
in a day.
day, there's a golden age where the sun is directly overhead. It's so bright,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
everything's under the light of the sun. But there was a morning leading up to that, and then there'll be an afternoon leading down from that, and then there'll be the dark heart,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But there's two sides to that dark heart because things get to retreat and to rest and to renew overnight so that they can burst forth in the spring of morning. So there's daily cycles. There's even cycles in your body called ultradian cycles, which is every 70 to 90 minutes, your energy actually waxes and wanes. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And your
Yeah.
attentiveness waxes and wanes. So we're not talking about technically Kali Yuga. We're talking about the principle of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
we
how
can
this
feel,
moment in time feels like a
yeah, it
Kali
feels
Yuga.
like that.
It
And
feels like the
then,
end of a cycle. Let's just put it that way. Not the
yes,
Hindu cycle, right?
yes,
Not the Hindu
yes,
cycle, but it feels like the end of a cycle. Let's
that's
at least
exactly
agree on
right.
that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, man, exactly. And so, um, if we think of this other idea that's coming up a lot in everybody's minds, which is this idea of apocalypse. Apocalypse is a Greek word meaning the dropping of the veil. Right? It's almost like as you go through the world and the reality that you think you're inhabiting, you're piercing the veil, or the veil's falling away, or it's moving out of the way, and you can see things now in their ugly truth, their pronouncements. Yeah. The hard reality of the actual world that we've been ignoring all this time. All of these observances and cycles and this relationship between logos and mythos that was waiting for us to recover. But the only way we re-encounter that, actually, the humans are like this. Humans only wake up in moments of crisis. Humans only start reaching for better forms of reasoning and sense making when things become untenable, when chaos starts arriving, when their relationship with order starts unraveling. And how can this be order if it's unraveling? How can this be the ordering principle of the universe? How can this be logos? How can this be truth? How can this be justice if it looks like this, feels like this? So one of the guys that I follow, he'll say, the world we live in today, the internet, for example, is a way of presenting lots and lots and lots of truth and facts in such a way that it paints a lie.
Oh.
And the old stories are actually untruths, which, if we can try and make sense of the world through their wisdom and through their allegories and metaphors, they are untruths which come together to form a greater truth.
A truth. That's true.
And
Oh
you
man,
can
such
always
an
tell
opposite.
when you're in a Kali Yuga is when it's easier to make sense of the world through stories and through myths and through the medium of myth and the medium of allegory and the medium of archetype. And wouldn't you know, the one language that we're all illiterate in is the language of symbol and the language of archetype. Of a better
And
way is, yeah.
I'll also add something there, Rocco. You say, it's the heart of Kali Yuga when it's imperative that you make sense of the world via stories and myths and archetypes. And also when it's almost impossible to make sense of the world without them. Like
Well,
there is so much
that's
confusion around,
why it becomes essential to do it that way, because that becomes
Mm.
the only way.
Exactly, exactly.
Because in a stage of so much of complexity, so what is chaos, right? Chaos is complexity that we cannot assimilate into forms of order. How do we order the world? We order the world through our paradigms and through our stories, through logos and through mythos. So Plato's cave is people appreciate, they make up a story of the logos. So all the prisoners are chained up facing the back wall of the cave. You know the arrangement. There's a flame behind them, and there's a procession of people walking, holding different shapes up. Animals are squawking. The vase is throwing a certain shadow on the wall. And the prisoners, their whole life, are tied up looking at the back wall of this cave, making up a coherent model, a paradigm of reality based on a fictitious story that they have concocted. And that is their only model of reality. Chaos means that the detail that you are trying to make sense of is so complex and so overwhelming that it breaks the waterline of your sanity. And so you can't cohere. The world seems incoherent. I can't figure out how all the bits join together. Things are not predictable. They're changing too thick, too fast, too quickly. I'm looking at a TV screen that's not only widening, but more things are showing up quicker, and they're changing, and I cannot track what's going on. My consciousness can't cohere. I can't make sense of the present moment. The nature of time changes. The nature and the quality of time changes, and things feel chaotic because suddenly the veil that by which I organized the world is now lifted, and now I can see the harsh truth and how things are connected and all the rest of it. And that assails, it breaks the model that I had, the simplistic childlike model that we get given in society to say this is how the world works. Cream always rises to the top. People are generally good. Don't worry, these politicians are going to fix it all. These are simple child stories. And we're scrabbling for sense making. And of course, we've completely lost our ability to develop meaning making and to explore meaning making. And in the face of such chaos and such overwhelm, the response of the internet is to analyze it more analysis, more details, more graphs, more takes, more blogs, more stories, more opinions. And none of this it's just more noise. And then to make sense of the noise, we're making more sense to make sense of the noise. Then the noise is too loud, so we shout loudly about how the noise is too loud.
That's it, man. That's it. That's the internet we're in. Yeah.
It's insane, right? It's insane. We're losing sanity. We're losing coherence. Now, the only thing you can do in your life, this is a rule that you can use in your life. When you feel overwhelmed, it's a invitation to you to drop the literal framing that you're trying to solve the world and the world's problems in. And you need to reorient yourself to the mythic context of your human story and your place in the cosmos. And it sounds counterintuitive, but let's give it a try. Consider for a moment that each individual person who can, you've been saying this, hey, how impossible is it to know what to feed your children or how to exercise or how to, there's endless glut of content, garbage content mixed in with good content, mixed in with dishonest content, mixed in with grift. How the fuck do you tell all of that shit apart? How?
Yeah.
There's not enough time in a day. There's not enough energy and attention in a human life. The only way you can do that is by trusting a community who appoint certain kind of, I'll be an expert on this, you be an expert on that. And if we're all acting in good faith, then we can trust each other and we can share the jobs. That's what villages used to do. That's what tribes used to do. But the tribe's broken down. The village is broken down. We don't trust anyone. So now you have to work it out yourself.
Yeah. We don't trust anyone. That's so true. That's so true.
You can't trust anyone, right? You can't trust anyone because people have now become funnel bros and marketing experts. They'll pretend to be your best friend, all the
Mm.
while selling you, and you're the chump, you're the fool, right?
Yeah.
So everything's become cynical. You can't trust anyone. And when you start caring about something, when the night gets darker and darker and darker, and it gets more chaotic, and the danger gets closer and closer and closer, eventually something in you starts panicking and freaking out and going, shit, I need a compass. I need a sense-making tool in the world.
Mm. Mm.
Now, I figured this out, that no amount of reasoning and logic and detail is going to solve that problem for me, because I'm a human being and I'm limited and I'm acting all on my own. I need two things. I need connection and community. I need different points to hold space with me. Yeah. And I need a different framing to make sense of this all. I almost need to go back to the old-fashioned idea that the earth is the center of the cosmos. I almost need to go back to this old idea that the earth is actually the center of the cosmos.
Expand a bit more on that, Rocco. I mean, I know you don't mean that literally,
No, not at all.
but
Not at all.
yeah.
But it's a way of seeing yourself in relation to the world. Because if you think about this experiment, do we know where the center of the universe is? It might not have a center. We don't know, right?
Yeah.
But even if you have the strongest telescope ever created and you point it in any direction, the furthest that you can see, the actual meaningful edge of that universe is going to be equidistant in every direction, because the telescope that you create can only see so far in every direction. So you're always going to find yourself at the center of it.
At the center, correct. Yeah.
So there's that practical reality. And then the second thing is, if we look at, like I did with soul, how did we get so sick? Oh, it's all these things that died, and that's the thing that we need to restore. Let's go again. How did we get to this moment where it's the humanist, the reductionist, the me, the I'm an individual? You are all of those things, but if that was the whole of the answer, we wouldn't be this broken and this sick. So when did it change? It changed during the Age of Enlightenment. This is when Copernicus and Galileo and a few others discovered that actually the sun is the center of the solar system and we're less significant. And then we had to find other ways. The problem was we slowly made less important our relationship with the cosmos. Because if it's all meaningless, why bother, right? And then we became more nihilistic, and we became more interested in our own cleverness and more interested in our technology. Now, what an arc of evolution we've been through as a species. Fantastic. I wouldn't want to throw it away. But so often when you're making a big change in your life, you don't know what you're throwing away when you throw it away. You're not wise enough to make that discernment. You realize only later, right? Only sometimes much too late. And what we need now is not another age of enlightenment. We need an age of alignment. Alignment. And that alignment has to start with our relationship with the cosmos. We have to put ourselves again at the center of that cosmos, like a child in a nest. Yeah.
By ourselves, you mean ourselves as a species?
And ourselves, because at the end of the day, none of this is going to work until we start finding a core of human beings that know how to lead themselves and know how to orient themselves to reality. No leadership can really happen until somebody goes through that kind of basic initiation first.
You know
We
what,
have to
Rocco?
center ourselves on that compass again and figure out what our North Star is and what we're standing in relationship with and how we make sense of the world. And it's definitely not going to be logically and rationally and in a reductionist scientific point of view. That's not going to help us. It's too much detail. And then even the detail is, you don't know what detail is the right detail. Yeah? And the ideas we have about what's true in the world have been mal-informed. I don't even know if it's misinformation or disinformation. Sometimes just too much of the right information can also mal-inform you.
Yeah.
So we are mal-informed. And now we need to almost close our eyes and walk in the dark. And that's what the beauty of the Kali Yuga does, is it turns the lights off. or it makes so many lights that it becomes dazzling and bright and chaotic and frightening. And so you close your eyes and you learn to walk in the dark again. You learn to find that compass in here again. And you learn the language of symbols and metaphors and archetypes and how you relate to the story that you are a part of. How human beings have a story that is much more inspiring than our history. Yeah? But that isn't fictitious. And so the Kali Yuga really is shaped like an egg. Yeah. And there's a dark part of that. And one of the concepts of the Yugas is that there are 4 legs of Dharma that we stand on. There's the leg of truth, there's the leg of purity, there's the leg of compassion, and there's the leg of austerity or discipline, you know. And by what we mean by truth is alignment. What we mean by purity is this habit of hygiene, spiritual hygiene, mental hygiene, behavioral hygiene. It's that kind of purity. It doesn't mean holier than thou purity. It means the amount of energy and attention we invest in practicing these things that keep our hearts and our minds clear and clean and flowing, and it's like cleaning the fireplace out so that it can burn nicely. If you leave it for too long, it gets choked with sticks and ash. Yeah? Just that clearing out is a form of making the fire pure, not by putting on wet wood or cheap plastic or something. Right? That's how the fire becomes impure. Austerity and discipline doesn't mean restraining yourself or bossing yourself or telling anybody else. It means that sense of self-leadership, that sense of structure, that sense of containment. You know, if you want to have a good candle on the altar, it's not blazing and spitting everywhere, it's contained. That's the discipline we mean. And compassion, we all know what compassion means. And the last one is, what did I say? I said
We covered 4: truth, purity, austerity, and
compassion.
compassion. Yeah,
Right.
compassion is self-explanatory. So
Right.
we've covered all.
Now, the idea, this is the idea that you need to understand about Kali Yuga, is it's saying that if you imagine the sacred cow is not an actual animal, it's just a symbol of sure-footed Dharma, standing with all 4 legs planted in the world. That symbolism, what it means is that our society, our traditions, our habits, the way that we organize ourselves in work, in money, in transactions, in laws, make it so that not everybody has to think about all of that all the time. It's just built into the structure of how we engage. That's what it means.
Very
And that's what a
orderly.
golden age looks like. It means when
Yeah.
that beautiful sacred cow is planted 4 feet on the ground. In the next age, it means only 3 of those legs can stand. And that doesn't tell you which 3. It says only 3 of them are incorporated into society and into daily life. And we have to try and bring that other one in and incorporate it all the time. In the next one, in Dvapara, that means only 2 legs can stand. That's when it's at its least stable and everything looks like it wants to fall down and fall over. But at least 2 legs in every family, in every society, in every project are still incorporated somehow. Now it becomes a guessing game. Is it truth and compassion? If so, it's always done at the expense of austerity and purity.
Purity.
If it's purity and truth, it's done at the, and so on and so on and so on.
Yeah.
And of course, we can extrapolate now what happens in the Kali Yuga. It means only 1 leg can stand. Only 1 leg can stand.
So shaky. So
So
confusing.
shaky. That's why everything feels the way it does. And how you know, this is how you know you're in Kali Yuga. Because how difficult is it to be in your life, both living your truth, both living a life of hygiene and alignment and purity and discipline. And I'm talking spiritual discipline, you know, practices, but still having that compassion and being able to live from that edge of compassion, both for yourselves and other people. Now, our life, our world our reality doesn't account for that, doesn't support that. If you try to be too compassionate, you're a fool. If you try to be too truthful, you get kicked out. If you try to be
Nice.
too pure, you fall out of relevance with the rest of the world.
Mm,
If you try to be too disciplined, you become overbearing.
mm,
Yeah,
mm,
and it becomes impossible for us to embody all four of those at the same time.
mm.
Now, during that moment of Easter, where this golden archetypal bloody camera.
Yeah, go on. Your audio is coming through though.
Yeah, but my recording stopped.
Your recording stopped.
Oh, man, I don't know if
You're
it's
back.
still working on. It's not a great recording today, man. The tech has not been working well.
Oh,
It says my recording is stopped.
oh, that's such a shame. You were in such
Yeah.
good flow, man. Uh, you want to keep going though? It's uploading. We'll probably record.
Yeah, but it's recording
Uh,
what was there.
oh,
Something went wrong and you aren't being recorded anymore. Everyone else is still being recorded. Refresh and rejoin from a regular browser, not incognito. I'm not incognito. I don't know what it's
if
talking about, man.
if there's anyone here, can you confirm if you can see and hear Rocco?
Yeah, I don't know, man. That's really freaking irritating. Anyway, I'll be back.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, this is such a mess. If I'm still here, if you can still listen to me, uh, I hope we get to correct this. I hope we get to have Rocco back. Hey, Rocco.
Looks like I'm back.
Yeah,
I don't know, man.
we switched sides on my riverside at least. I don't know if this happened for you too.
No, no, it's right.
All right. Okay. Yeah, Rocco, you were in good flow, man. You were talking about how this feels like the Kali Yuga, how just
That's
one leg
right.
standing, it's all shaky. And
You can assume or guess or interpret. So whether that is in a day or a relationship or a project or an exercise workout, you can tell that things are coming to an end one way or the other when it's so difficult to hold that composure.
mm, mm, mm.
And the symbol of Easter is Jesus pinned to the cross, a human being pinned onto that cross, that 4 points of
Oh,
Dharma.
oh,
Right.
oh.
Trying to hold the impossible together in the dark moment. Yeah. And then the symbol is he is crucified. And then not only is he crucified, he's humiliated before that, right? Because that's how it feels
Mm,
to try to be a truthful person in this world and an aligned person. You have to wear the brunt of the inefficiency and the unkindness and the lack of compassion and the untruthfulness in the world. You have to wear that, right?
yeah,
It's just
yeah, yeah,
symbolic.
yeah,
But now
yeah.
he wasn't dying quick enough, so they came along and they stabbed him with a spear because the next day was supposed to be a holy day. And they didn't
Mm,
want to have mess and fuss on a holy day, so they quickly had to stab him so that he would die quicker. So he dies, they put him in the tomb and they close up the tomb. Now,
mm,
yesterday was Easter Saturday. That's the day that we lit 4 candles and put them on our dinner table. And we invited guests
mm,
around. And I told them that story and I said, you just have to choose which of these candles you can hold the space for tonight.
mm,
And
mm,
somebody,
mm.
I said, yeah, you do truth. And she was a lady who's struggling with her own inner truth, not in a dark way, just we're all struggling with it. And she said, I can't do, I can hold compassion. So I said, okay,
Mm.
good choice. And I said, ironically, that was truth.
Oh,
Yes, yes,
yeah.
so perfect. And little
Oh,
Maya got
yeah,
purity.
yeah.
And I can't, and a friend of mine who's working on his own inner child discipline, he got discipline. And so the point is, we don't have to hold all of it because if you're in community, you just have to try hold one corner down. But then you need
Yeah.
three good friends in a circle
Mm,
to try hold
yeah.
the other three down. Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
invitation into the community of this moment because we can't face these deaths and rebirths necessarily, all of them by ourselves. Some small
Mm,
ones we have to, the long dark night of the soul. We've all had these
mm,
moments of
mm,
crisis, like when your dad passed away. No one could rescue you
mm,
from that.
mm,
In fact,
mm,
you
mm,
had to be the one holding all of that space.
mm,
But the invitation for us over this symbolic period of Easter is that there is some leadership principle in the world that's trying to hold it all together. And we can see ourselves in that, but we can also see ourselves failing so badly to be like that. Yeah. And the invitation from a better way is, can you just hold one of those corners down this weekend? Can you just say, I'm lighting a candle for this, just for truth, my relationship with truth, just with my relationship with compassion, just my relationship with austerity or discipline. Like, and I mean from a wholesome point of view, not a overbearing point of view, or my relationship with purity. Again, not overbearing. And then I also realized we don't have to do all four 100%. We can just do little bits of each, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
and we can work on different things every single day. And here is this marriage between these ideas of Kali Yuga and Kali, this dark goddess who represents darkness and time, but she's not evil or mean-spirited. She's a fierce, protective mother, protective of her children. You know, and this is the archetype that we have ignored for too long. Do you know Kali is the most universally worshipped goddess? God, in fact, in all of India.
Really?
Yes.
I don't know that.
Yeah. It's more universal, more relatable. And you know, Bengal is like their whole culture is centered
Yeah. True.
on that Ma Kali,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there is something feral and primal and necessary about that energy in the world. What is more motherly than a fierce lion cub protecting a fierce lion mother protecting her two cubs, killing in the name of? We don't like to look at the harsh reality of nature. We don't like to look at the harsh reality of men. We don't like to look at the harsh reality of women and motherhood. We're all idealistic, all in our head.
In one way or the other. Yeah. True.
One way or the other, and this is exactly the moment of that invites and accelerates Kali Yuga. We accelerate the darkness by our ignorance of what real light looks like, you know, and the necessity of processing shadow and moving through the darkness and having a relationship with the things in this world that are not pretty but necessary. Not pretty but necessary, like boundaries, like limits, you know, and then finding ways to transcend them. But I'm thinking of leadership, I'm thinking of masculinity, I'm thinking of the soul, I'm thinking of these death and rebirth cycles, I'm thinking of long dark nights of the human soul, I'm thinking of apocalypse, and I'm thinking of crucifixion and death and rebirth and resurrection and renewal. And these symbols are all tied together. And we are in the heart of such stories at the moment. And it's much easier, actually, to make sense of the world in light of that than it is to try to make sense of the world through the internet or through Twitter or through news. Yeah?
You know what, Rocco? When we were talking about all of this, I was wondering. It's not slightly. It's so ironic. It's so ironic that we had to do a live video that's an hour long while we were talking about the noise on the internet. And halfway through it was when we actually got into the groove of actually talking about the heart of the moment, the heart of our message here, the heart of what we're inviting people through in this community. And it's so ironic. It couldn't
And
have been any other
imagine we
way.
had a community that were already initiated into this form of exchange. We could
Yeah.
just open space and we could just get going.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. But that's why a community matters. It's not just so that we can have people listening to us. It's so that we can lead people into this sanity and meaning making of how to relate to each other and how to support each other through such long dark nights and through such moments and through such an unpleasant unfolding reality. We can only do this in community. Can only. But even our ideas of community are so broken. Yeah. Anyway.
Now, Rocco, I have a few things I wanted to talk to you about, because honestly, today's session has been a lot about me also being a student. I've been listening to you describing all of this metaphor that
Yeah,
I
yeah,
am
yeah.
not too conversant with, honestly. So I've been understanding it myself. One of
But
the
you get the
questions that
symbolism right.
I get it. Yes, yes,
Yeah, yeah,
yes. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
i- in a very raw sense, Rocco, this makes so much sense. I don't know if you checked out my yesterday's live video where I was talking about Kalyug, Kali Yuga or
Yeah,
Kalyug
yeah,
as
yeah,
we
yeah.
usually call it in a common parlance. I've been always told this idea of we're in a kalyug right from my childhood. And I feel it's so crazy how it's always been said almost as ridicule. It was said so many times in my life as a
It got
child
cheapened.
that it really got cheapened, and it was almost ridiculed away. Like anything bad happens, you just say, "Oh, this is Ghor Kalyug." Ghor means extreme, extreme Kalyug, and that's what we've always learned as children. And so, when I titled this video Kalyug or Kali Yuga, I know a lot of people might just ridicule it away again. But here we are talking about probably one of the only ideas that will help us make sense of the moment and also provide us a map going forward. But then there is a question for you, Rocco. Tell me if we can actually answer this here itself. But what actions does this inspire in you? I mean, one of the actions, this entire idea of the darkest night of the dark night. I mean, I think the way I'm relating to all of this is that we are in the darkest hour of the darkest night. It's
That
in the
will still
heart of the
come.
Kali Yuga.
This
That will
was just
still
a
come.
symbolic reminder that's in our calendar on how to face it, because it's just around the Easter period in the Northern Hemisphere. So it's the Christian church were still influenced by what they attempted to write out of history, which was the pagan relationship that communities and societies used to have with cosmos and with the nature. And their way of doing it was following an annual seasonal calendar where their festivals would honor these kind of symbolic events. So this is by certainly not the fact that you and I are talking and we're going to go carry on with our day afterwards. I promise you, this is not the darkest hour of the Kali Yuga. This is a dress rehearsal. This is a dress rehearsal. There has been ages of such profound horror and suffering in humanity, and we've got the ability to do that now. And what we are definitely sitting with is a lack of the kind of self-restraint or sensibility or compassion integrated into our behaviors and our culture and our societal norms that will prevent us from not treating each other in the worst possible ways as soon as the first bit of danger comes. Even the most civil society is something like 3 or 4 meals away from 3 or 4 dinners away from anarchy.
Wow. So
You
you're
know,
saying that.
when we had COVID, we got a taste of what it's like to have a global economy, a relationship, a reliance on other people in the world and these systems of trade and exchange and flow, and what it's like to have that interrupted in a way that you didn't plan for. And then all you need is 2 things to arrive at the same time. Australia is a country separated by an enormous rail network, vast distances, vast distances, and these little isolated pockets of people.
Yeah,
And so suddenly when there's a fire or a flood, train lines just disappear. And that means the flow to the supermarkets disappears. That means we suddenly have something that looks like an apocalypse movie, an Armageddon movie happening in our supermarkets. And how do people behave? Do they take enough toilet paper and water just for themselves? No, they take all of it. That's the tragedy of the commons. Things that everybody relies on to cohere as a society, everybody thinking like left brain, thinking like me, thinking like I need to solve the problem, fuck everybody else, thinking like community is a fool's game, a better way is an idealistic, naive idiot's game. People think like that. The majority of people think like that. Now, the irony is, when that moment comes, guess what the reason is that you're not going to survive? It's exactly that kind of thinking.
yeah, yeah.
And you think, I am not the fool because I think like this. And yet, if a historian or an anthropologist looks through the ruins of your civilization, your bones of your life 1,000 years from now, and they do the math, they will determine that the exact reason that you suffered that collapse was precisely because you were
You were
thinking
selfish.
every man for himself.
Yeah.
You cannot survive every man for himself. It won't work. And our test will be crisis, and the universe will teach us. Karma will teach us to value all 4 legs of Dharma again, and to try and integrate it into our reality. So, I don't know if we can answer that whole question. But for me, it was the idea that you don't have to hold all four candles. You can just hold one of them. And maybe if you watch this, you can write into us and tell us which one of those you're going to hold in this moment. And then come and be part of our circles of connection and gathering and goodwill and bringing sense making and meaning making back and changing our way of thinking and our way of relating to ourselves and the world. Because we can't solve problems in one live call. That's just us two talking at a camera. We need people in the room getting this, understanding this, asking questions, challenging it, trying to figure out for whom it must matter. I can't persuade anybody here.
Yeah.
And if your circumstances are not persuading you, you're just waiting for the inevitable to come, and it's going to come. It's going to come.
That's such a rude awakening, Rocco. I mean, man. There's a part of me that's heartbroken, honestly, right
Yeah.
now. There's a part of me which is telling that other part, dude, what the hell were you thinking? I mean, you know this already. This is the truth. There's a part of me which is just feeling as if it's just a remembrance again. Like, this is
It's
so
not going
true.
to get better.
It's only gonna get better after it gets worse, right? We
That's
don't know
right.
if the better.
Yes, you have to go. The only way out is through. You have to go through the
Yeah.
absolute heart of the Kali Yuga. Now, I wrote something. It said, Aphelion, when the earth wanders the furthest it will from the sun. This is a metaphor. When humanity has wandered the furthest we can from that singular divine truth, when the earth wanders the furthest it will from the sun, the unnatural darkness that takes good things and breaks all bonds, it presses in like thieves with a graceless blackness, sick and covetous, sick and selfish and hungry enough to leech the fragrance from holy incense. There comes a dark moment so bad that it doesn't matter what incense you light, it can't lift the spirit.
Yeah.
The night of thunder, which is this archetype of Zeus, of Indra, the Vajra throwing the lightning bolt, the chariot of the god. The night of thunder with his wide skirts and his quick temper is distant. He's distant. And he's courting small dangers. There's small dangers in our stories.
Yeah.
The night of red storms, which is Mars, which is the god of war. He's aiming spears at small shadows. Everybody has that spirit of war inside of them, fighting some small battle in their marriage, in their family, at their work, with their neighbor, ideologically on WhatsApp chats. Only the dark sun, stern and full of art, keeps a brooding and reluctant vigil, its lead become like iron. Now, who is Saturn in Vedic
Shani.
astrology?
Shani, I think.
Shani represents discipline, karma, justice, right? Hard work, responsibility, the consequences of one's actions. So only that aspect actually now can help us. Consequence. Our relationship with cause and effect, our growing up, our sense of, oh shit,
Oh,
Only the dark sun, stern and full of art, keeps a brooding and reluctant vigil. His lead become like iron. His lead become like iron. His lead is the thing that insulates him from all other signals. But now that thing has become like iron. There's a part of me that's very Saturnian, that's very like Shani. Because I'm always telling everybody, you have to come right, you have to do this, you have to do that. And I don't mean to be a bossy father. But let me tell you what, that part of you is eventually going to wake up. And this voice is going to speak in your ear and you're going to go, oh my gosh, of course this is the only way. Of course this is the only way. And the question he asks is, where are the bright souls? Where are the bright souls this night? This period where the Christ is going into the tomb and he's dead and we don't know what's going to come in the morning. Where are the bright souls this night? Here where the earth has wandered the furthest it can from the sun. Where are your torches of defiance? Because what we need now are torchbearers. Not people who want to set fire to things and make trouble and instigate, but people who say, I have a bright idea. I have something noble that's worth following. Come with me. Let's go this way. Somebody who wants to light the way. Yeah. Where are your torches of defiance? Where are your anvils? An anvil is the thing that we craft the sword on and the spear on. You know, the thing that won't yield. That hard edge that we actually need to temper our shit ideas out on, to get all their impurities out, so that the thing that we pick up and yield afterwards actually can cut through the veil, actually can sever us from our illusions, right? That dorje and the dagger. Where are your anvils? Where are your hearts of adamant? Where is your fierceness? Where is your fierceness? When the wolves are howling and the flock is maddened, where are the shepherds? There's lots of wolves and there's lots of bleating sheep. But now, when the wolves are howling and the flock is all maddened and all running around like headless chickens, where are the shepherds now? Where are those people in our society, in our culture, that can step up and participate in that kind of project? The shepherding project, the caring for the flock project. Here, where winged Mercury may only find us unreachable, and Venus plays the unveiled whore. Venus is the god of love and attraction and desire, and what have we made of her? We've made of her Instagram influence culture. Everyone's got their tits out and tanning oil rubbed on and filters and all the rest of it. Here, where winged Mercury may find us unreachable and Venus plays the unveiled whore, what then? What then? Find your light. Kindle the flame of your defiance. Temper your iron. Be fierce even in your kneeling, in your refusal to be brittle. This is all about building the sword, building the sharp sword that we're going to fight this spiritual battle with. And kneeling is that process of when you heat something up and then you quench it in the oil, so that the bonds, the actual bonds of the molecules, they can align in a certain way and make that thing extra strong, extra bendable, extra sharp. Yeah. Kindle the flame of your defiance. Temper your iron. Be fierce even in the way that you anneal your own blade, in your refusal to be brittle, so that you may never break, and that you can cleave at last to what is good and what is true in this world, for it needs you now more than you ever needed it. The only thing that's going to take us out of this is not going to be some rescuing story, some magic bullet, some perfect answer. It's going to be maturity. Human beings are going to be so horrified at the nightmare that's coming. We're going to realize that the only thing that's going to get us through is human leadership. And human leadership isn't Marx or Seneca or Marcus Aurelius. That's all high-minded bullshit. Human leadership is necessity. It's maturity. It's what do I need to do now, practically. And the most practical thing that you can do is get your house in order, and I mean your spiritual house in order. Quieten down that left brain. It's not supposed to be in charge. Bring up your right brain, your sense of the mythic and your symbolic, because that's much better at calibrating to the signs and the signals along the road. And then pull together in a community. Find the courage to follow leaders, not to want to always have the last say yourself. And you don't have to lead everything. Real leadership shares leadership. Yeah? Real men value women. Real women value men. So it's not a single answer. It's complex, man. But it worries me and has worried me for a long time. But you know, I'd like to hear from you. There must be these phases of denial and bargaining and desperation that we go through until you get to acceptance, right? Until you get to the question that goes, "Oh my God, what does love look like right now? What can I do?" You know?
Yeah, and that's it. That's it. Honestly, I mean, if I be really honest with you, man, I've been sitting with an acceptance of how bad things are for quite some time. But there's been an idealist in me that has been motivated by everything that changed me, everything that the kind of alchemy that I went through. I thought in a sort of a naive way that if only I put out that sort of stuff,
This can help other
and
people make the same.
this can help.
And we can
Yes,
turn the
yes,
ship on the water, right?
exactly.
I
And
believe that.
yeah, I mean, I believe that too still, but I've
I
also
don't
come to a
believe it
realization
anymore.
that I I believe it, there's a part of me that still believes it, but there's also a part of me which now feels that that's just not enough. That's just not enough, because to face the hard reality of the internet, like I I simply cannot stand out anymore on the internet and talk about the same philosophy, the same philosophy that transformed me, because there's a lack of initiation to the extent that it's almost it's almost impossible to get through people. There's so much lack of initiation, there's so much lack of coherence in the world, that I feel the first project to solve is that coherence. And then maybe. Hmm,
Imagine walking into a room of toddlers.
hmm.
Toddlers is like a
I know
3-year-old,
what you mean.
and
Yeah.
they're just fucking throwing paint on the wall, hitting each other, rolling around, screaming, jacked up on
Hmm.
sugar. What sense can you talk into that crowd of 100 toddlers? That'll help
Hmm.
them.
Not in the first hour at least,
No.
but it'll take.
You know what will galvanize them?
Hmm.
Crisis.
A crisis. Oh,
Crisis. When
I
they
thought a common
encounter a
project. You.
crisis. So one or two people start coming to you out of crisis. These are the clients that I used to see. And then I helped them
Hmm.
with their crisis. And I got so disheartened because I thought, oh, now they're going to wake up. But they just solved their crisis, their little
Yeah,
boo-boo on their knee, and then they run away again to
I
carry
faced
on
that too. Yeah,
in the toddler battle. But
yeah,
when the earth starts shaking, or when
yeah.
there's a boom of lightning, all toddlers turn to see where the adults are in the room. Now, our adults in the room are fake adults.
Hmm.
Jordan Peterson is a fake adult. He's not a leader. He's a petty, phlegmy, bitter man. Joe Rogan is not a leader. Our president is not of America is not a leader. The president of India is not a leader. Your thought leaders on the internet are not leaders. Even the great voices, the ones that I respect, like let's take Adam Grant. That
Hmm.
man is not talking about the crisis that we're having at the moment. He's talking about how to just relate better at work, how to be slightly more functional in a dysfunctional, diseased
A
reality.
very small part of the puzzle. Yeah.
Very small, and it's not
B-
wrong, it's beautiful, but it is
yeah.
so woeful. That's like being on the Titanic and knowing that you're going to hit the iceberg, and somebody is doing the most. He's got a guitar circle, and everyone's singing beautiful songs, and it's just amazing. But none
Hmm.
of that is going to help you tread water, figure out how to keep people alive in freezing cold water, figure out which way you want to. Like
So yeah,
there's no through
it's not.
road there.
It's not the most relevant. It's not the most salient.
No.
Yeah.
So you
There's.
tell me, who is the most relevant voice in this world at the moment, in this context? Somebody that is talking to the danger, somebody that is telling us to wake up and prepare ourselves, and not trying to lead us now based on that back into the heart of Hinduism or back into the heart of Christianity or back into the
That's
heart of
it. That's it.
Islam.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because some of these great people are here, but their solution to that problem is either to be so airy fairy, like Sarah Al-Khaldi talking about 5D ascension and all these
Hmm.
mystical concepts.
Hmm.
I don't know what to do with those things. They're wonderful, they're interesting, they're probably true. You know, I see a lot of
Hmm.
veracity in the things that she's saying, but that does not look like human leadership to me. Now, I'm not criticizing those people. I'm saying what is needed now is someone who understands the clear and present danger
Hmm.
and is trying to encourage people to respond in an appropriate, sane, mature way. Who is
And
that voice?
honestly, Rocco,
Yeah.
that's the coherence project that I'm talking about. Honestly, now, coherence project in the sense that it has to appeal to the leaders firstly, the leaders in us, to make sure that we're talking about a common coherent project, working towards a common coherence, so that,
Hmm.
and then waking up to a transcendent perspective. Like you mentioned, there are good leaders on the internet, good voices on the internet, but a lot of them are either these hairy fairy things that you talked about, or they are leading us back to not transcending our old paradigms, but rather back into our old paradigms. And that's what's got us here in the first place. The division that those individual paradigms have led to, I don't think the solution is to go back into those paradigms.
Well, if any of them were ever going to lead us all forward, would have led us forward. And the
Exactly.
problem
Yeah.
is, none of them are prepared us in a mature, sensible way for the crisis
Hmm.
we're about to face. Religion is divided, but it's unified in one sense, and that it says this life doesn't really matter. Everything matters in the next life. Yeah. Uh, i- i-
A
Christianity
lot
and
of the
Islam.
practiced religion is that, yes, practiced.
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
mean, if I went into the depths of Hinduism, I didn't realize that that is the
I'm not
project.
saying Hinduism. I'm saying
Yeah.
Christianity and Islam, like those two.
No, but
That
even
yeah.
I'll say, man, I'm in India. Even practiced Hinduism is like that. Practiced Hinduism is like that. That human beings have a god above them, and that is the god you worship. That is the god that you have to aim towards and get towards at the end of this life. So this
Yeah.
life is in that sense, in practice Hinduism also, it's a practice ground for
Oh my gosh.
reaching that, right? So I mean, Hinduism, the one of the best projects that we have had, one of the best downloads that we have had, even that has been maligned with all of these ideas. And therefore the idea that I feel, I mean, I find you to be one of the sanest voices here, man. Not buttering you up, honestly,
No, no, I
but that,
understand. I mean, I
right?
actually really understand.
Yeah. And therefore, the collaboration towards a better way seems like the most prudent thing to do. And I use the word prudent, instead of practical, because practical, I have good intentioned friend, not good intention. I have intelligent friends who would say that it's practical to be every man for himself. But they cannot say that it's prudent because it's not future looking. It's just not. It is to get through the night. Yes, you can be the wolf, you can be every man for yourself, but
Yeah,
it's not going to get us through. It's
yeah.
only going to lead to more conflict and eventually
There was
chaos.
an anthropologist called Margaret Mead
Mm,
who studied civilizations, studied current and historical civilizations and long dead, through archaeology. And they
mm,
said to her, "What's the most telltale hallmark of a civilization?"
mm.
And they were expecting her to say the invention of fire or the wheel, and she said no, it was having an old person buried with evidence of a broken bone.
Yeah,
In other words,
yeah,
the bone had been
yeah,
broken in their youth, but they only died in their old age.
yeah,
And what
yeah,
it meant was that person was not every man for himself. Somebody helped that person get along, fed them, looked after them, which
yeah,
means the society or the tribe valued their elders or valued human life in such a way that even somebody who couldn't output or couldn't work was valued enough to look after and mend and heal so that they could live a full life. That to her
yeah.
was the hallmark of
Mm.
civilization. And I wrote the other day, I said, civilizations are not built are judged based on what they build or how clever their ideas are. They're judged, according to me, by how they treat people who don't fit in.
Yeah, yeah. Have that as your standard. Have that as something that you judge your own civilization by, and you know,
Yeah.
we live in um, bullshit societies,
Yeah. The thing
right?
is, what do we really need? We need a form of renewal. That renewal is not going to come from holding on to the old system. It's also
Mm.
not going to come if we're celebrating the tearing of everything down. Yeah, just fuck it
Yeah,
all up and tear it down,
yeah,
and I don't
yeah,
care. And that's nihilism.
yeah, yeah,
Because the nihilists will do that only because they're childish, only because they're so completely ignorant of all the blessings of life that they rely on, or they feel so butthurt by being
exactly.
excluded from certain kinds of
Yeah,
blessings that if I can't have it, I want nobody else to have it.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that is an extension of that same mindset that says every man for himself. So that if other men, if I'm believing every person for himself and other people are having it better than me, I want to make sure no one has anything because I can't handle the shame of my inequity, my powerlessness of not being able to have for me. We can't go back to traditional living. We can't go back
yeah,
to simple communities. We have to
yeah.
find a new way forward. And honestly,
A better
man,
way.
I get hopeless sometimes for exactly that reason. And some voice in me
Mm.
keeps reminding me. It says, our test, our test will be crisis. Our test will be crisis. Your job, Rocco, is not to build a, a loud hailer loud enough and compelling enough and beautiful enough to get everyone's attention. Your job is to start attracting the people who are waking up in waves, who are not satisfied with all of the millions of kinds of answers. They need to be able to find you. You need to be just loud enough, and you need to be resonant and aligned enough that they know what sanity and meaning sounds like when they encounter you. And it's got to be a safe, comfortable place when they land. They've got to be able to orient themselves. There've got to be people there that can say, oh, thank God you made it. One more person into the club. Okay, this is how we're organizing ourselves. That's what initiation is. These are the rules we're playing by. This is how we're playing the game. This is what you hold on to. You keep your consent. You know, the most important thing is you actualizing as a you bringing your whole self to this. Now, that doesn't mean you have to be perfect. It means you have to be vulnerable and honest, and we can help each other patch up. But you still have to be accountable for you. At the end of the day, you have to make your choices for you. Yeah. You can take refuge in the teachings. You can take refuge in the principles. You can take refuge in the community. But you also have to know where the boundary of that is. You have to know what it is we're looking after. We have to be careful in who we let in, not because our noses are up in the air, but because that's how you keep a safe ship. Yeah? And we don't want to build this enormous bridge that everybody in the world can come across with all of their bullshit. We're going to build a very, very narrow bridge that you have to drop a lot of your bullshit to come along on this bridge. The bridge will get you to a tomorrow, but your hard work will be the alchemy of letting go of the things that you are so reluctant to let go of. Your ideas of feminism, your ideas of leadership, your ideas of politics. You have to let those things go so that we can build a beachhead on the other side, and we can start building and imagining this brighter future and actually start creating it and start having ways in which to welcome children, having ways in which to educate children, having ways in which to patch up difficult relationships, having ways in which to initiate people deeper into the mysteries or deeper into their apprenticeship of craft and calling. We need elders, we need custodians, we need pioneers, and we need visionaries. Yeah, different kinds of leaders, forward-looking and backward-looking. Conservative and progressive, in balance, managed by our philosophers, those who are thinking our thoughts, and our bards and our storytellers, our myth weavers, those ones who are helping us shaping our collective mythos together. That's how we're going to do this, you know? That's how we're going to do this. But, man, I'll be honest with you, I'm a bit despondent because if we don't know yet how we're going to bring people into this community.
Yeah.
But our job is not to create a magic train service to everywhere. Our job is it starts from everywhere. Our job is to create an ark, a ship, a small little craft, a raft in which a couple of things can survive and ride out the storm and see how to get there.
Such a hard line to hold, Rocco. We have talked about this in our personal conversations multiple times. I don't know if we have actually ever worded it out for everyone to see, whoever gets to see this.
Everyone.
Everyone.
Look, but, not to say we're not grateful for the people that have shown an interest and connected and shown up.
Oh yeah.
I don't want our cynicism to shit on that, because it's not the intention. But if you're sitting with the weight of the burden of leadership and accountability and concern, desperate concern that Chetan and I are sitting with, it's hard at times not to become cynical, not to become desperate, not to become frustrated. If you are not feeling that in your life, I promise you don't understand what leadership is. You know?
And you know what I was about to say, Rocco, is something I'll share for the first time online. Rocco and I were talking one of the million times we've had this conversation, and we were saying how it's so hard for us as men in our families to actually keep doing this, because it's not only us, Rocco and I, who have to sacrifice things. It's our families we are making sacrifice things. And I mean, if Rocco's words were, if we both were not married men, we would be living outside of a box somewhere, having reduced our expenses, right? So that we would be able to do this full time, but we cannot. We just cannot do this without the support of a community, without making money. That money which all of us do need. It's a reality that we have to encounter, that we have to just take into account.
My life has a belly that needs to be filled as well. And currently I'm not putting food on the table through my work.
Yeah. And your work, Rocco. I mean, if anyone is here watching this live or watching this later on, just go through Rocco's work sometime. And if that doesn't bring tears in your eyes at some level, not just literally but metaphorically at times, that article that I shared, this, what was it, Rocco? We're
This is not
not
a
fine.
Substack post. Yeah, we're not
This
okay.
is not a Substack post, right? Um, that article, when I read it for the first time, I wanted to do nothing else but to share it with anyone who is willing to listen, anyone. Like, that was the effect that article had on me, Rocco. And
Mm.
I I genuinely hope that these messages reach more people. I'm not sure if a 200-minute live video will reach everyone that we want to reach, but the message is here. The distillings will reach people, and I just hope that they find us.
We don't know, eh? We don't know.
Yeah. Oh, I have a couple of comments, Rocco. The fledgling, is that Yash? I last time also he was online with us. I do not remember your name. I think it was Yash. He's wished us a good morning, so good morning to you back. And he says anarchy is partly the answer for this crisis, as people may get jolted awake. Yes. Oh, yes.
Mm.
I remember the name correctly. It is Yash. Yeah, and it's true, right? This is something Rocco touched upon. Anarchy is one of those crises that we may end up reaching.
Yeah, it's a form of social chaos.
Hmm. Hmm.
The opposite of coherence is chaos and anarchy. Yeah.
Yeah.
So chaos is when things don't have agency, and anarchy is when things have agency and they're agents of chaos.
Oh, yes.
Mm. And
Rocco,
archy,
is there a
archy is architect, like order.
hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Anarchy. Yeah, yeah. It's the opposite of
I
that. Yeah.
hmm. I want to ask you something, Rocco, before we close this off. Is there any part of you that feels that we can still turn the ship around without such a crisis? No. Oh man, that's such a heartbreak for me because I still feel that.
Go out in
Not
your
at all.
street. Go out in your family. Go out in your WhatsApp feed and just scroll up. Go up in your Facebook feed.
Hmm.
There's a thing I call Jarman's law. Have you heard of this?
Yes, I read it in a few articles on one of the um, Substack people that I follow. You know him, perhaps. He's a thought leader.
Are you familiar with this thing?
Are you sharing your screen?
Yeah, I'm just going to read it quickly.
Yeah, go on.
Jarman's law states, let me find it. Jarman's law states that the more relevant information is to solving a complex problem,
Hmm.
the more relevant information is to solving a complex problem, the less relevant it will be regarded by those who need it most. And the more decisively it will be dismissed by so-called experts. That's like Murphy's law. The worst thing that can happen will happen. And there's all
Will
of these
happen.
laws.
Yeah.
This is one of those things that I defy you to find it not the truth. If you try and argue somebody that's not mentally prepared to help themselves, the more relevant information is to solving a complex problem. And you need to
Hmm.
start seeing life as a problem like an equation, not a question with a
Hmm.
single answer. Life is
Hmm.
an equation, society is an equation, dharma is an equation. Yeah. The more relevant information is to solving a complex problem or a complex equation, the less relevant it will be regarded by those who need it most, and the more decisively it will be rejected and dismissed by so-called experts.
And that's your answer to why it'll never not be a crisis that wakes
Let
us
me
up.
give you an example. Academics, we think they're all about learning. They're not all
Hmm.
about learning. They're all about preserving the hierarchy of academia. An academic wants to become a well-known academic. His only purpose for living, his reason, his raison d'etre, his the thing that will give him meaning and feedback in life to reward him for all of the effort and the slog and the humiliation and the grind that he's put in is if he climbs up that ladder of academia and he's recognized by all of his peers. So even if his study of academics is dysfunctional hierarchies and gatekeeping, right, he will be disincentivized to pull the plug on the own sick game that he's playing because it will knock him off the only rung that he has in life. That is the reason why religion sustains. That's the reason why
Yeah.
business sustains. That's the reason why sick economies are sustained. That's the reason why abusive marriages are sustained. That's the reason why everybody does everything, is because I'd rather keep fucking around in the sick game, because if I pull the plug and I expose myself, even the little bit of gains that I've got will be tumbled down. It's basically the prisoner's dilemma. Yeah. And people that are uninitiated are too psychologically immature or ignorant to understand that the only reason that is sustainable is because somebody else created laws and systems and infrastructure and interfaces and institutions in business that safeguard your ignorance, and you are held like a child in a nest that's busy unraveling and falling apart. All the civil liberties that you think are your right and everything in the universe works like this is a silk thin thread that can be snapped in a moment. And only when it's snapped, only when you're face to face with crisis, are you forced into this shocking psychological rude awakening when you realize that all of your belief about what's keeping you safe is an illusion. Yeah? And that your idea of every man for himself, people are going to run with that. And then we're going to look at the horror that that creates. And the only alternative to that is living for something bigger than yourself, for a community. That is what humans evolved to do. We evolved to operate in community, so that not every man has to catch his own fish and grow his own apples and mend his own shoes and fetch water, and this we could swap and share the roles around. But we became too complex. Now the solution for that complex problem, it sounds counterintuitive. The more relevant information is to solving a complex problem, the less relevant it will be regarded by those who need it most, and the more decisively it will be dismissed by the experts. So, can we turn the ship on the water physically? Yes. Realistically, not a fucking chance, because the only way that people arrive at the willingness to do anything is once it's too late, or once it's almost at the brink, right at the brink. You have to lose so much to wake you up into, oh shit, I can lose everything here. And only then do people go, fuck, what matters more? I wish it wasn't that way.
So, Rocco, what is the project then? The project is to, I mean, a part of me, even if I intellectually and also in my heart understand what you're saying, that it's almost impossible. A part of me still wants to do something to initiate people and have myself initiated towards a better way of doing things, so that we can avoid that crisis, if at all that's possible. And even if we do not avoid the crisis, the people thus initiated, and myself included, will be the ones who can then, if we survive, who can then plant a better way going forward. So the project will still, the action that this will inspire in you will still be to initiate people, to get people to understand why we fucked up, what we fucked up, and what better could have looked like, right? Because this is a trope in our psyche. The everything that you've talked about, that people do not wake up unless there's a crisis, that's a trope in our psyche that I do not know if we can ever do away with it, but perhaps we can transcend it by becoming aware of it and then acting despite of it, not because of it.
What would have happened if you get a society, or sorry, what would have happened in you if you were initiated into that perspective from a young age? Not through complex philosophy, just through simple storytelling until the idea landed, until the sense making of it landed. There are cultures in the world that operate like this today. There's the Sandkoi culture in South Africa. People used to call them Bushmen. They were the primitive nomad hunter-gatherer peoples that were still living like Paleolithic lives, but they were very sophisticated culturally. They're very gentle with each other, very giving, very sharing. It's in
Okay.
their nature to think of each other as, because they live in a desert climate where everything is harsh and unforgiving, and the only comfort, the only joy, the only certainty, the only safety net they have is each other.
Mm. Mm.
So necessity taught them that. Yeah. So they grow up believing that there's nothing more sane and more normal. In fact, they can't understand how people would behave any other way. They find they can't get their head around
Incomprehensible.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Completely incomprehensible. Now, if you just teach young people that,
Mm.
you don't make fools of them because you teach them the dangers of the world as well. Necessity has to work both ways, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It wouldn't be such a culture shift for you, or oh my God, now imagine that's just the way you thought about things.
Mm. Mm. Mm.
What would a community look like, all thinking and operating like that? Very, very, very different.
Yeah.
Now the fact that you can do it to a person means you can do it to a younger person. The
Yeah.
fact that you can do it to one person means you can do it to 100. If you can do it to 100, you can create a net that people can come into and feel that comfort when they land there. Wouldn't you want that?
That's the
Wouldn't you
dream,
want to
man.
realize that
Yes.
there's actually a community that you can join online today, that if you arrive there, they've got teachings for you, they've got sense making for you, they've got a fellowship for you, and everybody there is there for a better reason.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you want that, right? You would. Now,
Yes.
our job is to figure out what we're yearning for
Mm.
and be invited to create that. Be the invitation and the welcome you were denied by life. Become the gift you came here to share. Become the gift you came here to share. Let mine be the hand that reaches down. Let mine be the lamp that lights the way. So all you have to do is tap into your despair and to your horror and say, what is the shape of that and what does my heart long for? Then you find other people like us or other people at all that care about what you care about and have
Yeah.
the courage and the gumption and the leadership and the determination to make it so. Because that yearning and that longing in your heart is actually placed there. That is your Dharma speaking.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
voice of absence and yearning and longing. And it's telling you exactly what is missing from the world. Exactly, precisely. And
That's
your pain and your agony and your dissolution and your concern about your child and your wife and your family and everything, your sickness at work, the spiritual truth that you're missing in the world is exactly the invitation to galvanize you to go and shape and create exactly that beautiful, authentic, missing piece. That's what we're all here to do.
that's Rumi's quote, Rocco. What you seek is seeking you.
Is it?
That's exactly what it means. Yes. Yes. This
That's what
this
it
is the
means. Yeah, if it means
yeah.
anything. Yeah, yeah. It must
Exactly.
mean that. It must mean
It
that,
must mean that. Yeah. What you seek is seeking you.
Yeah, so we don't know the fucking answer, man. But what we're doing with A Better Way is we're trying to bring a lot of threads together in one place. We're trying to weave a parachute out of all the broken things, all the
Yeah.
beautiful things,
Yeah.
and make
Yeah.
a parachute out of this, make a raft out of all these sacred bits of detritus that have been abandoned and rejected by society because it's not me enough. And we want to take these beautiful things and make a life raft out of it and sail somewhere. And more than that, I want to teach people how to navigate by their own North Star, how to follow that voice inside of you and how to clear out all the other noise and filter it out so that you can hear that voice more clearly, so that you can
Exactly.
find your
Yeah.
own fuck yes and follow that like a God. You know, your only
Yeah.
God is your own fuck yes. Yes,
Yeah.
that
Yes.
voice, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And there's a skill to all of that. There's better and worse ways of doing that. There's better and worse ways of navigating. There's better and worse ways of orienting. And we're trying to find and practice the better ways. And I want to teach you the philosophy of how to do it. And this master philosophy, this master practice called Agile, of how you make all of this fit and work in a daily life, in a relationship, in your personal development, and in your hobbies and your passions and these projects that you're trying to make live in the world. And more than that, what we need to start focusing on is a dream. Our old dream is dying. And nobody does anything if they're not galvanized by a dream. Something that inspires us, that makes us go, yes, that's the thing I want to lean towards. And I've got visions about what the world could look like and what is still possible, even from here.
Yeah.
We can't undo this fucking mess, but the mess is necessary to wake up the majority. But if this darkness is coming, it becomes more important for us to find ways to create meaning and shelter and preserve that meaning, and give it a chance to launch forward and plant trees in whose shade we will never sit and whose fruit we will never eat from. But it becomes more important than ever to plant those and to leave breadcrumbs and light the way, open the way and light the way for those who will still come. I'm driven to that, but I'm at the limit of my uh, ability. I cannot do that without help. I cannot do
Yeah.
that without a community.
Cannot do that without resources, without
Without
money.
resources. Yeah.
By the way, if anyone was moved by that idea of Rocco talking about a dream and having a collective dream and moving, not even just a collective dream, just your own dream also, just watch this one movie that Rocco recommended to me. I don't think I told you, Rocco. I did watch it that same night. Wonka,
Oh, isn't that
2023.
lovely?
Oh man, tell me about it. Me and my wife just loved it so much. We tuned into it that very night when you recommended it. The movie is
It's a game
Wonka
changer.
2023. It's a game changer, yes, really. And do not watch it literally. Like, of course, we have talked about symbolism this entire 100 minutes that we've been together. It is a metaphorical movie. The entire thing is symbolism. And what's the name of the actor, Rocco? Timothy.
Timothy Chalamet.
Yes. So
What a
watch that
genius.
exact movie. He's a genius, really, man. What acting, what scripting, what songs. The entire aura of that movie is just magical.
It's just incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible. And you know, the thing that they're poking fun at the whole movie is exactly the cynical reality in the corporate world today. Exactly
Oh,
that.
yes, exactly, exactly. And that you remember the policeman who's getting fatter and fatter by the day,
Oh my
consuming all the
God.
chocolate. Oh
And
man.
the church is not a church, it's just a front for business. And the police
Yes,
is not
yes,
there to
yes.
look after law and order, they're just a front for business.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And all the business is chocolates, chocolates and more chocolates and more
And they
chocolates and
don't even want to steal his idea because he makes better chocolate. They just want him to stop making it so that
yes.
their selling won't be. So they don't want better chocolate for people. They don't want to
Hmm.
steal
Hmm.
his better recipes. They just
Yeah.
want no one must come and disrupt what they're doing.
Yeah, yeah. And they don't care about the chocolates.
No, they don't care about
Like as much,
anything.
they don't care about anything. As much as they're making chocolates, they don't care about the chocolates, and that's
Uh,
such an ironical reality of our lives, man.
Yeah, no, I watch that as I so often do. I take cannabis, THC, yeah, and I
Huh.
watch a movie like that high, and I do a download while I watch that movie. I watch it with a different set of eyes, the whole thing.
Yeah, yeah,
There
yeah.
is
Hmm.
so much symbolism crammed into that movie. You cannot believe it. We were
Hmm.
watching, and I'll say, "You see this, you'll see that," and then it will even deepen your experience of that movie. You cannot believe how much truth and beauty and meaning is squashed into effortlessly,
Yeah,
skillfully,
yeah,
gracefully, enjoyably
yeah,
squashed into that one experience. It's quite incredible.
yeah.
The movie's called Wonka, and it's a prequel to Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, but without messing with the original or touching on that in any way. But it just even deepens that story. And it
Hmm.
reminds you about something that you knew to be true as a child, that there is wonder and possibility in the world, and that you can bring about those dreams depending on the beliefs that you allow inside yourself. Yeah. And depending on the things that you say no to, and depending on the things that you say yes to, and literally how
Hmm.
you show up.
Hmm.
All right, man.
Rocco, you know what, man? Tell me, advise me if I should tell the secret out already. There's a part of that movie, the entire movie, this guy is wondering what is the secret of the chocolate that his mother used to make. And right at the end of the movie is when he figures out the secret. Rocco, should I tell the secret or should I let people, if at all they end up watching the movie? This
Um,
live video is as long as the movie, ironically. But
yeah,
if
no,
someone is
no.
here at the end, I think we should give them the secret, man.
Do you know,
The-
I wrote a post called A World of Our Own,
okay.
because that's one of the songs that he sings.
Oh.
The
Oh,
lyrics
okay.
go like this. They say,
Hmm.
a world of our own,
Hmm.
a place to escape to from here, a world of our
Hmm.
own where we can be free.
Hmm.
Wherever you go, wherever life takes you, this is our home, a world of our own. And so I wrote a
Hmm.
post called A World of Our Own, and I said there's no reason whatsoever, no limitation of biology, psychology, or physics that suggests that we cannot amongst us foster shared dreams, and that we cannot, through our investment in those dreams, create the expansive reality that we want to live for ourselves and for our children. We are in great need of dreamers. We do not want to be listening to tech bros or to politicians, to public intellectuals or celebrity personalities because, despite their individual merits and charms, they are all part of the illness we want to wake up from. We want to be making platforms for the dreamers among us, the ones with beautiful ideas of where we might get to and how we might make our way there from here. This is our golden ticket. The secret of chocolate, we are told, isn't even the chocolate that matters. It is the people you share it with. This
Yes.
is our home, a world of our own.
Yes. And that was the secret. It was so, like, you understand it so deeply. The entire movie, he's looking for the secret that's supposedly in the chocolate that his mother used to make, which is why he thought that he loved those chocolates. And quite literally, his mother's message was, the secret is not in the chocolates, it's
The
who you
mother.
share it with. It's the mother. Yes,
The mother,
yes,
yeah.
the mother. Wow.
Yeah. So I
What?
recommend, I highly recommend that article that I wrote. Read that
Mm,
first, actually.
mm,
Read that first and then go watch that movie because I promise you, for whatever it comes by way of spoilers, you'll get
mm,
tenfold in return from
mm,
having been primed. Yeah.
mm, 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 mm.
And then you'll start getting an understanding of what Chetan and I are trying to do. Because if you read that article and you try and understand it, put it into ChatGPT and let ChatGPT help you understand it, and then go and watch that movie, and then imagine that you had watched that movie without being primed, without being initiated into the depth and the meaning that was possible, how much more shallow your experience would have been, how much less
Yeah,
return you would have gotten. Yeah. And then you
yeah,
understand the power of initiation, that something, there is a way that human beings can help each other prime ourselves for certain kinds of experiences, even difficult ones, wherein we can get gold out of that blackness.
yeah,
Always, always, always. And there's profound lessons to be found in those things. And that can only happen in the context of initiation. And that initiation can only happen in the context of goodwill. People that are leading you not because they want to get something from you, more likes or sell a product. It's because they want more of us in that healthy heart space that we can create a world of our own from. That's what we
yeah.
want.
And
And
Rocco,
yeah,
Yash, who is the only person here with us right now. Firstly, Yash, we deeply appreciate it, man. I mean, all the engagement that you've provided us with, and we hope we find more such people like you who interact with us in real time. He was asking about the article's name, and I've just shared the link in our YouTube chat. And Rocco, we should add it in both of our live streams. We'll add it in a
yeah,
pinned comment that
yeah.
this is the article, this is the movie that we're recommending everyone to watch. Ah, yes, that's it. Ah, what what a project, what a time to be alive, what a Kali Yuga to be a part of. What a soulful conversation, Rocco. We started off a mess. I know I did. And I'm feeling much more aligned, honestly. I'm
I'm still
slightly
feeling exactly like that turbulent mess inside.
mm,
It's a habit that I've learned to keep going up here, even when I'm feeling like I'm dying in here. And it's not that I'm being inauthentic, it's that this is how sometimes we need to face the Kali Yuga, this
yeah.
moment of dissolution. Like, if I let that unravel here,
Hmm.
I'm letting that unraveling ripple out everywhere. And somebody needs to hold the space, somebody needs to hold the flame alive. I don't want it to be me all the time,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
no one else is coming. I've
Yeah.
figured out until they are,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
yeah, so I still feel like a
Mm.
complete mess.
A- And I appreciate you for saying that, man. Appreciate you being
It's
vulnerable.
fucking
But
hard, bro.
yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah.
This moment is hard.
Yeah. All right, man. I think that's pretty much it. Do you have anything
Yep.
else to add, Rocco? No?
No,
Done, right? Awesome. This was a brilliant live session, man. I think we should be able to get this across in a more concise manner as well. That's what we're working towards, honestly. These live sessions will keep going on, but there will be a lot more content which is digestible, just
these are
prettier
raw.
in some
These
sense.
are raw.
These are raw, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And this is only 20% of what Rocco and I actually do almost on a daily basis now. Uh, but yes, there is much more concise, much more prettier content also coming out on a Better Way YouTube channel, on a Better Way Substack, on all platforms, wherever you can search for a better way, there is going to be much more digestible medicine coming out pretty soon. Pretty soon. We are working towards it. We're
Yeah,
working towards this.
and
There's
whatever your
nothing else
relationship.
rather.
Say again?
I was just adding, there's nothing else we would both rather be working on right now. As hard as this is right now, this is the calling that is driving us towards itself. There's
Yeah.
nothing else that we would rather be working on. Like, fuck, I do not want to keep making stupid projects that make people spend more time on food delivery apps and whatnot. You know all of that jazz.
Yeah.
Okay. Rocco, you wanted to say something and then we'll call it
Yeah,
off.
no, it's just if anybody's listening to this and whatever your relationship with with prayer is like, mine is not aimed at any version of God that someone can teach me about in a book, certainly not. But I still pray in my own way, in a very profound way. And if you have a relationship with prayer or with goodwill or with good wishes, then remember us and remember this project in your prayers at this moment, in whatever
That's it.
way. You know, and sometimes give us the greatest prayer by joining us. Sign up to the project, sign up to the community, come figure out how you can help and be helped, you know.
Yeah. And one of the ways we should be sharing this, Rocco, is we should be telling people how they can be a part of it in a no cost way, in a low cost way, because we've talked about the rawness of us needing resources to actually get this thing out, you know. And if someone can actually help in a low cost way, I would be deeply appreciative
Well,
of that.
not only
Yeah.
that, but like if there are people who are nerds at promo and marketing, and
Oh
you
yeah.
don't know
Yeah.
what to do with your energy and time, come and help us figure that out. If
Yeah.
somebody is very good at design or video editing or sound editing or art creating, or you're a specialist in some other field and you're aligned to this, we don't want it to be us. We want this to be a collaborative project. The more the merrier. You know, I want to invite thought leaders who are aligned and who are equally discerning and have the same caliber of heart alignment, thought, messaging, etc. Not everybody has to be eloquent or behind the camera, in front of the camera. We can do so much good in so many different ways. We want to create a community so that there's many people collaborating and towards something that can stand a better chance of living in the world. It cannot just be us two mugginses over here. We don't know what we're doing is half the problem. You know, we two, there's like hopeless goodwill agents here fighting against thunder, pissing into a storm, and we're getting splashed and getting nothing back for that in return. We don't mind giving, but there's got to be a better way. And if we can't find it, it's not that we can search harder inside of ourselves for that answer. It has to come from a community, you know. So
Yeah.
come be involved, come ask questions, come and shoot the shit, come to the next town hall meeting and you know, chime in. Now I've released a link here. You can actually come into the studio, not just watch on YouTube. You can
YouTube.
actually
Yeah.
be in the audience here. We want that.
Yeah.
So look, I think we've gone on way too long.
You think so?
Yeah.
It's longer than the movie that we recommended now. But yes, it's still good. It's still, I think we did good, man. Okay, thanks a lot. This I hope I know I believe that this is a good use of technology, man. Technology that lets us do this. So it's a good time to be alive in that sense. It's a horrible time to be alive in the sense of everything else that we've talked about. But on that note, thank you, good people of the internet. Thank you, fellow doom scrollers. We'll have one final message from Rocco and then we'll call it a day. Rocco, go on.
If Dharma is something that is true about you and your time and your place in this world, it means on some level, we all chose to be here now. And the question is, we have to ask ourselves why.
Yes. Ask yourselves why. Okay. Thank you,
Take
Rocco.
care.
Thank
Ciao,
you,
ciao.
people. Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Cheers. Rocco, you have to end this on your YouTube too.
I don't